Good morning to everyone out there. Today is October 13th. It is Monday. It is Columbus Day. It's about 5:10 in the morning. Today we have another edition of Jim Butcher's Dresden Files. This one called Turncoat. And you Dresden lovers out there, this is the latest one I had finished reading. Actually, this is 2 books ago I finished reading. But it's been a minute since I've done one of these. And here I am to tell you about it and what I thought of it and everything else. So this here is book 11. And it should be fairly obvious at this time that I'm completely invested in this series. I am loving what Jim Butcher does here. I have 7 more books left in this series after this one, plus a few short stories that take place kind of between the books. So I have a good chance of getting this done by the end of 2025. But first, a little behind-the-scenes moment for you of actually even doing this review. Because I actually finished this book about 2 months ago. Actually, probably 3 months ago by the time I'm actually recording this. One morning I was taking my drive into the office. It's about an hour drive. And I decided, you know something? All I do is I listen to music or listen to a podcast and go in there. Why don't I take this time? I got an hour to do a dry run of my book review. And I thought, that was a great idea. You know, it saves time. It lets me put some thoughts together in advance of even doing my notes. And I thought it was a wonderful idea. Now, picture me driving along the New Jersey Turnpike, just essentially talking to myself the whole time. And I brought the entire book out in my memory. And the moments I had forgotten along the way, I would remember later on and try to reinsert it, in the dialogue. And it worked out so well. I even did my little asides that I do when I'm talking here, just to illustrate examples along the way. And about an hour later, I pulled up to my office. And I thought, that was great. I got to do this more often. It's the new thing. It's a hell of a time saver. You got it. Well, spoiler alert, it didn't work out that well. Because 2 things happened. First, I had a sense of accomplishment after I finished it, which usually is a good thing. But then I had to go back and type it all up so I could perform it again. And it was almost as if all the creativity that was in me just got used up. And it's the best way I can describe it. It almost made me think, if you read certain fantasy books, and they might have some kind of like magic user in them, some magic systems I've seen have like a weakness in the mages that they put into the storylines, where the magician might have to sit there and study and try to like memorize a spell to be used later on. And it has to be memorized to be very effective. However, once they would cast the spell, the memory would like leave them. And they have to go back to the books and relearn in an effort to rememorize it and use it again. It's an interesting limitation, especially because it would force the character to study and memorize multiple spells to survive like an ordeal or a showdown with another wizard, let's say. And for us, the reader, we get to see now multiple spells in action instead of just one being used the same over and over again. It was kind of like when I was a kid watching Voltron when it was first on TV back in the 80s. And, Voltron would fight the big Robeast and he would just, boom, pull out his blazing sword. And that would pretty much be the coup de grace of the fight. And just, it would be over very quickly. It's like once the sword came out, fight's over. But sometimes, not often, but sometimes they would start the fight not with the sword. And we, as the viewer, got to see like other weapons and other abilities. He would have this like throwing star or the lion lariat, almost like nunchucks. And cheesily enough, the electro cross, that his little emblem kind of came out and shot out. So, like, for us, it was fun to see other options, and it kind of let the fight draw on a little bit longer for our enjoyment. And I think that's what I encountered. I had already used up the memory when I cast my spell and just felt drained afterwards because that was the effort I was bringing to the table and the energy. And it was hard as hell to go back and do it all over again. The second thing that happened, and I heard about this before, but I didn't really understand it until now. It's a conversation regarding writing and authors and how they go about doing their work. And it typically goes like this. They say there's two types of authors out there: outline writers and gardeners. Outline writers put out the basic skeleton of the book. They highlight that this chapter is important because this is where Sherlock meets Watson for the first time. Or this chapter is important because this is where we see Chekhov's gun, which will be important later in the story, and things like that. And here's where we learn about, forgetting magic after using magic concept. It's in this one chapter, and I have to outline it because later on, in the finale, you'd think he would just keep using the lightning bolt twice. He can't, because of something we've outlined of we had to put it in chapter 5 because chapter 12 was important. And this is usually good because with the outline, it pre-paces things out and allows authors to have it when they write, and they can build toward it the whole time. Whereas gardeners, they let the characters take them along to where the character wants to go. It allows authors to be creative in that way, and it seems almost true to the people they're writing. They don't become too one note. They don't become derivative. They can actually become who they are. And what gardeners really hate is they think writing an outline means they've kind of written the book already. So now they're just filling in the blanks. And that kind of saps some of their own creative energy and their input. So, which is why I was never on board with that as a concept. It didn't seem real to me. However, I think that's exactly what happened to me. Since I'd already done it all in the car that morning, it was difficult to go back to the beginning and rehash the whole performance again. So bottom line, if I ever decide to save time and do that again, I need to record me doing it. And either just post that recording or transcribe it down from the recording so I don't forget all the thoughts I've came up with that led me there. So, oh well. Sorry for the big preamble, but I'll get on with the show right now. But that was literally, it took me so long to get these notes down. And I don't know why. It was like a block. It was a huge obstacle to get past. But, let's go on. Turncoat. Now, in the Dresden Files books, we usually get an opener to these stories that's kind of like en media res. A caper that's reached its climax. And we see our stalwart hero trying to escape with his life. For instance, in the 6th book, Blood Rites, it opens with Harry running for his life, carrying a cardboard box full of puppies. It opens up with, him running down a hall and then taking a left turn, only to have the demonic monkeys that were after him come and bash right into the wall in front of him because they couldn't corner as fast as Harry. And he's launching magic spells behind him as he's running for his life, all while trying to keep the puppies in the box he's trying to rescue. A very high energy opening. Well, Turncoat takes a step in the opposite direction. Instead of the high-octane opener that we generally love, it opens up with Harry actually relaxing and recuperating. We usually see him at the end of a lot of these stories, him just completely beaten down, physically, emotionally, psychically. Usually he finished up with a toe-to-toe combat with somebody and losing for the most part. He uses all the tricks that he has, everything in his pockets. And it could be like one and done events too. Like he had like a water balloon and he threw it at the vampire because it's full of holy water. Boom, one and done. But he's kind of like usually gone through his arsenal. And since he's been running ragged for about 500 pages or so, he's typically hungry, tired, exhausted. So this time we actually get to see him relaxed, recuperating, letting his wounds heal all over his body and face and what have you. You know, licking his wounds, getting his power base back up. Although it wouldn't be an exciting story if we just saw Harry sitting around, drinking a Coke and playing solitaire for 100 or so pages. But then, boom, bang on his apartment door. And who's out there? Morgan. You know, one of the wardens of the White Council, and truly a pain in Harry's ass, as we were introduced to him back in the first book. See, Morgan is a loyal warden, and he takes his warden duties very, very seriously. When we first met him, he was responsible for watching Harry. Because the White Council had put this proverbial sword of Damocles over Harry, because he had some dark magical talent within him. And if he stepped out of line and went the dark route, Morgan would have killed him on the spot. And even sometime later, after the sentence had been kind of like lifted from Harry, and Harry himself became a warden, there's still some ill will between the two of these guys, Dresden and Morgan. So Morgan appearing at his door, all busted up, bleeding, needing Harry's help, that's the last thing Harry's looking for on his well-deserved day off. And all Morgan says before succumbing to his wounds and kind of passing out unconscious, "The wardens are coming. Hide me, please." Well, isn't that just an opener for a book like this? So, Harry calls his morgue buddy, Butters, helps him out, because, can't go to the hospital, because the wardens will find you there. After some lighthearted banter during that whole exercise, the main thing to come out of it is that Morgan's leg. He should not be walking. He has to remain in bed or taken around in a wheelchair. If he walks on the leg, the artery is likely to burst open and he'll just bleed out quickly. Again, important to know, because it's a huge issue for the rest of the book. Every time they got to do something, they got to carry him, lift him, levitate him, do whatever happens. Not easy when you have to be on the lookout for attacks and whatnot too. So they are figuratively and literally handicapped by Morgan's leg. So they can't exactly go running around as they need to. But more on that later. So this brings us to the whole point of what we're dealing with in this novel. Turns out, previously, Morgan was found holding a knife in bloodied hands above the body of one of the council members of the White Council of Wizards, a person by the name of Algernon Lafortier. And Morgan's claiming he was framed. He doesn't remember anything leading up to the waking up with the knife in his hand. And if they found him, he will be executed, because he was quickly captured and imprisoned, but not after hurting some of his fellow wardens that were guarding him. But now he's escaped the prison and is looking for Harry to hide him out. Because basically, no one would believe that Morgan went to Harry for help. And they do an very interesting thing with how he escaped from, the warden prison, too. Because if you harken back to the events in the previous novel, Small Favor, there was, this medal ceremony of sorts at the beginning of that novel. And during that, Lily, the Summer Lady, had bestowed upon Morgan and upon Harry a silver oak leaf. It was a token of gratitude from the Summer Court for their bravery and their actions that helped Summer Court in some fashion. And the silver oak leaf will grant them a boon. I'm trying to remember. They might not both have gotten it at that time, But at one point, Harry got his that way, and Morgan had gotten one as well. I just forget if they were together at the same time. By the end of that novel, Harry had used that oak leaf. Although oddly enough, to a gruff, this creature supposed to be killing him, and told it to get him a donut. And it gave Harry enough time to like flee an island they were fighting on, and it ended the hunt for somehow by using it in that fashion. But it turns out that Morgan used his boon to help him escape, and simultaneously to help tracking him by magical means very difficult. So that was good too, because it kind of like took out the how didn't they just show up at the door 5 minutes later aspect of the story. So now he can stay on the lam for quite a while. Pretty smart, pretty convenient. So now, Harry agrees, and he has to start his investigation to figure out what the story is. And he pretty much will have to go to the White Council headquarters and ask around. But before he does that, got to pick up some med kits and such from his brother, Thomas Wraith. And then, while he's driving back with the supplies, he just gets this, investigative sense. He's being tailed. Someone is tracking him somehow, and he doesn't like it. He opens up his wizard sight. And this is when things really start going wrong. He sees something jumping from like rooftop to rooftop. And the wizard sight has that kind of effect like it's soul gaze, where anything he sees and how he felt when he saw it is going to stay with him. It will stay with the wizard forever. When Harry saw that moment, he would get flashbacks of that sight years afterwards. It was just something horrible. He got the sense of just something rotten, surrounded by a haze of absolute wrongness. A sight that actually knocks Harry out. And he just incapacitates him for like one more time. It incapacitates him for several hours. And he was driving while he was doing this. So you can just imagine what ensued in that scene. When he eventually pulls it together, he's like, I gotta leave the car behind. It's kind of a wreck right now. Let me go walk. That car gets beat up every freaking book. But he goes for a walk, and it turns out he's actually near where the werewolves, the alphas, live. Something's in my eye. These are the werewolves that he has befriended way back in the second book, Full Moon. But he gets to their home, tries to gather himself, tries to explain what's going on and why he might need their help. When all of a sudden, bam, that thing that he saw attacks. And we get a nice hell of a battle scene that goes on right there. Because you have Harry being able to do this thing and attack, and he uses his spells and he defends and what have you. You got a handful of werewolves, the young ones too, which are hot-headed enough to just thrust themselves into the battle. And you get to read and imagine the battle strategies that the werewolves use while working together in unison against an unknown foe. Like one would come out and rake them with the claws, and it would take their attention this way. Then the other werewolf would come behind him and rake them across their back. And they were working in unison to keep this thing off balance and see that the attacks are going to come from unknown directions. And we get to see Harry doing his thing, and while he's casting his spell, trying to figure out what this thing is. And it shows that whatever he throws at it isn't making a dent into this entity. And this entity just kind of just shrugs off the attacks. It gets more annoyed than it does get hurt. And we seem to get the sense that it was not getting hurt. And eventually it goes full bore on the attack. And it beats the ever-loving spit out of the werewolves, actually killing one of them. And just as Harry was about to use one of his pretty effective spells on the thing, it shifts shape and flies off into the night. It was a skirmish. It was very good reading. Switching back, we get back to a little bit more of that medical stuff with Morgan. And we heard him tell Dresden the thing he encountered was a skinwalker, a Nagloshi. It usually comes from tribal lands. They don't travel far past their homeland, but the thought is it's possible that during Morgan's escape, maybe he was on a train or whatever else, he found his way going through the lands. And the skinwalker, the Nagloshi, caught a whiff of him. And now it wants him. Like it invaded his territory, it's got a beef with Morgan. And that's why this thing came out to Chicago. I mean, we get a little exposition here on skinwalkers, and all of it just says that these things are the toughest you will ever encounter. They are millennia old, and they're typically avoided. Well, now we have an interesting segue. Oh, by the way, so what he got to... no, I'm not going to get into that right now. So, we have a nice segue here. Harry has to now investigate. And he reaches out on the Paranet, this little, like, internet of magic people that he's set up a bunch of books back, trying to get some information. Especially trying to find out if anyone has seen any warden activity that he might know if they're coming close or not. And he reaches out to Thomas Wraith, again, to see if they could talk to Justine, his old lover, before she was really beaten up, too. But she kind of works as a secretary in the White Court. Maybe she has information. Cut to a rendezvous where Justine of the White Court comes to meet them at this club that just bounces around the city from location to location, called Club Zero. And here we get kind of that club scene. You could take it right out of the Matrix Revolutions. It's the Merovingians Club, where the people on the dance floor are like in leather bondage, or half naked, or otherwise hedonistic attire. And Jim Butcher gets to have a little fun with this one while he's writing it. And we get to have a little fun while reading it. Harry, seeing half-naked women all around him. Lewd scenes of vampire on human doing whatever it is they want to do. It makes the imagination just do flips on you. If your imagination actually goes in that direction, of course. But the main point of the scene is we get to be reintroduced to another White Court vampire, Madeline Wraith. We first got introduced to her way back in book 6, Blood Rites. The one with the death curses and the porn industry. The ex-wife of the porn producer trying to kill him, and her being caught up in a scheme with King Wraith. Here, Jim Butcher gets to dust off his creation and bring it back out and insert her into this whole affair. And quickly running through the scene, Madeline threatens Justine in some fashion. At one point, she gets impaled, like almost crucified onto a table. But as much as they don't like each other, Thomas can't kill her. I mean, he could, but the White Court has a problem with one white vampire killing another White Court vampire, especially when they're family. But he does let Justine kiss Madeline, just so she can get burned by that true love that exists between Thomas and Justine. So while Justine might actually be afraid something will happen to her from Madeline, Madeline will not be able to feed on her in any way. Even though they do the emotional feeding thing, but if she tried to sink her teeth into her, just that true love nature of white vampires would just repel her and burn her up and blah, blah, blah. I have to admit, as fun as the scene is, though, I don't recall anything really happening in the scene that was of too major importance. I mean, it was great and all, but the exception of Madeline being there, it was kind of like just a setting things up kind of scene. And I suppose, bring in the villain to remember who she was and not just assume we'll have instant recollection of every character we've ever seen. But it does lay down the level of hatred that these characters might have towards each other, which obviously is important for later on. But time moves on. we see that one captain of the Warden, Anastasia Lucio, comes and makes her appearance. And she and Harry have this nice relationship that's been building and growing for a little bit now. We also get at least 2 scenes where Harry comes home and only to find Morgan and Molly like at each other's throats with like Mouse in between them trying to make sure no one gets hurt. Once was Molly went to Harry's place to work on some potions, and when she got there, Morgan wasn't expecting her. But Morgan knows about Molly, knows that Molly used dark magic, and he fears and mistrusts her because of that. So, like, Harry comes in, and it's like, Morgan's got a sword out to Molly's throat, Mouse is right on top of Molly. It's just like, everyone just relax. He just walks in to see this. It's ridiculous. The second time Harry comes home, Lucio had been under attack or something like that. She's on the couch, passed out, resting. And Molly thought, hey, maybe I can help things out a little bit. I'll enter her head and see if she knows anything about LaFortier. And Morgan discovers her trying to do this. Well, entering people's minds without their permission is pretty verboten by the White Council of Magic. So Morgan tried to warden over her. And in the scrape, Mouse actually gets shot. Which is great because we get to see Harry come home and see all this stuff saying, what is wrong with you people? And I'll tell you what, Mouse getting shot ends up being pretty cool. Because later we learn that Mouse feigned the extent of the damage on himself. Himself? Is Mouse a girl dog or a boy dog? I don't know. I don't know if they've ever said it. I don't remember. Anyway, Mouse feigns the extent of his injuries in the hopes to de-escalate the feud, thinking everything will go on the attention of Mouse. We gotta, get the bullet out, bandage her up, or him up, or whatever else, and go that way. So, Mouse is more of an entity than we know. It's more than meets the eye, as they say. And I'll tell you what, during the course of all this, and other areas of the book, we really get to see more of Molly coming into her own. It flushes out her character more and more. We know that she's more apt with defensive magics. She used that veil pretty often, and she's using it more and more effectively as time goes on. We actually see her diving into her studies, really taking it seriously. But we also see that she tends to want to use her dark magic. There's temptations in her to just dip into it, as a shortcut. A quick out of whatever she's working through. Like here, she kind of wanted to just dive into Lucio's mind to say, maybe we can get some other information we can use to help us all out. But if she does and is caught, the White Council will kill her. She has a sentence on her. And if they kill her, they'll kill Harry as well, being her mentor. He took on that debt when he took on her. Moving on. Now Harry says, listen, I have to actually investigate the murder scene myself. If I'm going to learn anything, I got to go back to the source. So, simple trek through the Never Never, and Harry gets from Chicagoland to Scotland, where the White House Council headquarters is. And this is cool because we actually get to see and we're treated to what it's actually like at the White Council. Sort of like seeing the teacher's lounge of Hogwarts, if you will, And we learn a few cool things here. One, there actually is a teacher's lounge in the White Council headquarters. And Harry chills out there with Ebenezer for quite a bit. And we learn that Ebenezer, which was Harry's mentor, was actually a student of Merlin. He's got a whole stack of diaries that Merlin has going back to the beginning. Something that will be of use in a later book, I'm sure. 2, we actually learn that there's an administration that works within the White Council. Yeah, they have secretaries. They do paperwork. We get introduced to Peabody, a real nerdy type who has wizards sign forms. It's like, oh my god, is this for real? They even need to fill out requisitions for stuff to take out of Hogwarts. And thirdly, we mostly get to see the investigation. Harry gets to see the room where the Fortier was murdered. He talks with Injun Joe, who was actually there. And he's doing incantations and such, trying to figure out when and how magic may have been used in the death. But he finds none. Which is weird, because how do you just kill a wizard with no magic being used? We even have a fantastic scene where there's a tete-a-tete between Harry and the Merlin. And this works out awesome, for us. Because you see, Merlin does not like Harry, and he would like to see him fail. However, since Morgan was one of Merlin's, if Morgan is executed, it has political ramifications on the Merlin. And he don't really want to see that whatsoever. And Harry being on the case, it just irks the hell out of the Merlin. But Harry puts him to the wall in a way. Basically he says something like, "You know magic. I stay out of your way when it comes to that stuff. I know investigations. You should stay out of my way." Which was a really cool scene, because he just beats the Merlin over the head with solid logic. And in the end, if Harry wins, Merlin wins. And Merlin hates that idea. He wants to win, but he don't want it to win based on Harry being successful. So he takes what he learns, goes back to Chicagoland, chills out with Murphy for a little bit, lets her know what's going on. And two things occur during this conversation. One, as part of the frame-up, it turns out like $5 million was dropped into Morgan's bank account. So that looks like motive. Murphy, being a cop, says, you know something? Follow the money. That will take you to somewhere you want to go. And second, Murphy reminds Harry, mostly when wizards die, don't they send out like a death curse or something like that? Why wasn't there a death curse for Le Fortier? Why didn't it go off? Why is Morgan still alive if he woke up with a knife in his hand? So it really got the investigative wheels turning and burning, saying, oh wait, shit, that's something to look out for. And then, they follow the money, they find other people, and generally what happens in these stories is there's an obligatory run into a baddie and have a fight. You got to keep the action going every now and again. Every 50 or 100 pages, definitely. We get introduced to some other new villains. They look like they're wearing suits and such too. And they all look the same. Like a whole bunch of clones are out there. Because it turns out they're actually being brought over from the Never Never. And here we get introduced to a new bad guy. Binder. Ernest Armand Tinwhistle by name. He's a bit of a hack in the wizarding world, because he's mainly a one-trick pony. He can summon and control beings from the Never Never. And we get a nice romp through Chicagoland as the beings are chasing Harry and Murphy. They're trying to get to this safe house storage unit that Harry's got the whole cast of characters holed up in. To keep them out of sight, out of the way, out of trouble. And if they need to, there's a small little exit hole that'll bring them into the Never Never. They can get away from anyone who finds them. And at the same time, Thomas was supposed to be watching and guarding over the safe house to see if people are coming in, which he actually does. Calls up Harry saying, hey, people are here, let's go. But now he's gone. Where the hell is Thomas? But fight. Are they going to win? Are they going to lose? Molly steps up her game. Boom. Mid-season finale. Sorry. Arrest Binder. Lock him up. use a tracking spell on him and let him go because there really has no reason to hold him long in like the real world. And they track him. They get to see him go to a hotel, and we get to see who's pulling the strings. Following the money, who's behind it all. Insert Madeline. So now we know Madeline and Binder are involved together as another faction. Which is great for us, because the White Court is involved. Now it has a visit to Laura Wraith, who rules over them. So Harry and Lucio get to take a drive, and now we get to see another area of Chicago that we've been introduced to before. Great scenes always go on here, too. A little politicking, a little sexual innuendo. But the best part is, the Skinwalker arrives. Remember him? And in this Remember the Alamo-esque massacre that just occurs at the Wraith compound, it gets hella bad. Meaning, we get to see the White Court vampires working in unison to try to kill the Skinwalker. And losing. It's unbelievably amazing. Oh, and by the way, the whole time they're describing the shapeshifter, they say it looks a lot like a tiger or a lion, and it just eviscerates anyone who attacks him or anyone he goes after. But for me, when I'm reading this, I cannot but imagine in my head that character from Invincible called Battle Beast. For the life of me, I cannot divorce this image from my mind from the thoughts of while I'm reading. Which, by the way, is just fine. Because this clawing through people, that image is kind of apropos. So to me, the Negloshi, that comes to mind. The whole book I'm reading. Sorry, little aside there. But at the end of the affair, the Negloshi kind of stops at one point after really going through the White Court, going through all the security. And he stops enough, and Harry's like, you could kill me right now, and you're not. You must want something. And it says, a trade. I have Thomas Wraith. I'll trade him for the Doomed Warrior. You have until sundown tomorrow, and you can reach me through Thomas's speaking device. His phone. So it's like, all right, that scene kind of ends on that note, but now we, and even Jim Butcher as a writer, has set up a time frame, a deadline that must be met. So as I start wrapping this up, the good news is we have all the necessary ingredients all put together. You've got a Skinwalker who has Harry's brother, and he wants Morgan. You have the White Court, who will now definitely help Harry, because they're going to get revenge on the Skinwalker. You have Madeline and Binder pulling some strings, because they kind of need to kill Morgan to help cover up their part in the whole LaFortier affair. You got 3 members of the White Council of Wizards, who, A, some want Morgan found so they can execute him, B, some want Harry to succeed and show Morgan some innocence. Oh, and Harry even brings around some of the werewolves that are left around to help him out as well. And you've got Harry, who has Morgan, but believes he's innocent, yet he has a brother's life who's in a Skinwalker's hands, and he wants his brother back. So basically, what will Harry do? At this point, Harry gets a little froggy. See, in the last book, Small Favor, we learned that there's a magical, haunted island in the middle of Lake Michigan. A place that the Denarians had taken their captive Marcone, as well as the captured archive in that book. And Harry had to go over to this island with his little Delta Force and try to rescue everyone. Which, unfortunately, for his friend Michael Carpenter, was nearly killed. And he had to put down his mantle as a Knight of the Cross. The island is kind of important because it fell on some magical ley lines, and probably had a lot more under its soil to be such a nexus of such magical energy. Well, Harry decides this will be the place that he will stand his ground. He will gather everyone and just drop the hammer. He thinks there's an actual presence on the island, which, by the way, he has named Demon Reach. So he decides to go to the island and try to invoke this presence. And this is where we get to see one of those fantastic scenes that Harry has to be very specific about the ingredients to help him pull off this invocation. He'll use things like glow-in-the-dark chalk to make a circle, because circles are very important for wizardry in this world. 5 white candles, and he'll actually make them into like a pentagram. A military K-bar, which is a knife. A silver chalice. And a bell. So we get to really get invested and feel the spell as it's being cast. And, obviously the invocation works. Demon Reach comes to Harry, and they fight. And they bond together. And one of the cool things that comes out of this bonding is while Harry is on the island, he now has total awareness of absolutely everything on the island. In fact, when he leaves this meeting and goes back to the dock where the boat is tied up, he knows the best path to take, almost like a shortcut to what he took to get up there. He knows to go around this part of the path because there's actually like a little family of squirrels and there's some baby squirrels in there to avoid it. And to avoid that section over there by the trees because there's a poisonous snake in there. He has total awareness, something they call intellectus, which obviously will come into really good handy for Harry when this battle finally kicks off. And when it comes down, everyone's on the island. The White Council, the White Court, the Skinwalker, Binder and Madeline, the werewolves. Sorry, I lost my train of thought for a second. Alright, well, this whole thing happens. The next bunch of chapters we go through is just fight after fight. And we get to be a part of it, I do hate to just gloss it over here, but I'm saying everything, including the kitchen sink, is thrown out on this island. Different factions fighting different factions as it all happens. Binder throws out his never beings, along with Madeline. The White Court is now using their ancient, council magic to do what they got to do as well. The Wardens are defending the White Council members and attacking at the same time. The Naglashi gets to see some carnage from him as well. And let me just tell you, the Naglashi battle is freaking epic. Hell, even Toot Toot, the fairy and his whole fairy crew, they've got a thing to do in this battle as well. It's just truly awesome work that goes on here. Well, when the dust settles, eventually Morgan is taken back with the White Council. The Naglashi is defeated. And we can finally get to see, the trial of Morgan. And as the trial's going on, and it winds down, Harry decides to pull out some ace in the hole he's got there. He wants to flush out the culprit, the one who's behind all the problems. And he had a cool idea previously, where another investigator who was involved in the story that was investigating Harry, he's now kind of helping him out now too. He's been staking out the entrance to the Never Never as it comes from the headquarters of the White Council to Chicagoland. And sure enough, as he's sitting there staking it out, a person comes through to kind of check on how things are coming along. And they have the culprit. And I'm still attempting to be spoiler-free here if I can, so I'm going to leave off who that is at the moment. And it does bring to light that there's almost some evidence now that there is, in fact, a secret Black Council that's been infecting the direction of the White Council from within. It's been aiding the Red Court of Vampires during their war with him that has occurred over the course of the last 7, 8, 9 books. But it turns out, this traitor actually has a specific power. Basically, it can mind control people. And it's been doing it for years. Special tool at its disposal where it can kind of like get people pliable. And then if he ever needs to say something and activate them, he has to do it just on a moment's notice. And in the mind control, enabled the traitor to flee the headquarters at the end, but also it allowed the assassin to kill LaFortier. Which, by the way, leads to an extra special verdict at the very end. One that changes these books permanently going forward. So, I'll tell you what. At 500... Is it 560? No. 550. 550 pages, Jim Butcher can cram an awful lot into this story. He's doing a bang-up job. And when it's over, I might have to check out some of his other work because I'm enjoying how he does this so much. I mean, this one had it all. And I truly hope that you're reading these as well. And I especially hope that you are taking the same enjoyment and appreciation out of them as I have. So, there we have it. I was finally able to finish this one and record it for you. I was getting to the point that it became such an obstacle for me, it was just hard to get back into. And it brought me to the point where I still have, next to me on a pile here, 3 backlog books to produce a review for you, including the next one, Changes. And because of the issue that I was having, I actually told myself stop reading the Dresden books as a punishment to actually sitting down and getting this one done. Hopefully over the next week, I'll get Changes done, I'll get the other couple done, and I'll get back into reading these books. But until that time, if you made it this long, I thank you very much. I hope you can enjoy the channel and appreciate it as well. Let you get back to your day now. 47 minutes, that's not too bad for one of these. Again, thank you very much. Take it easy. You'll see me again.